Hello, everyone, and welcome to Snap Take. This is Glazer of Snap Judgments, the official podcast of Marvel Snap Zone. Today, we have our Havoc Spotlight Guide. We're also going to look at Legion and Nico. We've got more decks for each of these cards than anyone, and I'm going to tell you right at the start, I am higher on Havoc than almost everyone. I think this card is going to be legit. I think it's going to be hard to use, but in the right spots, I think this is going to be a powerful card. We're going to talk about that card, but we got a few things first. The first of those, I'm going to ask you to hit that sub button, ring that bell, leave a comment, hit a like. It helps us out. It's totally free to you. And what you get from this channel is 3 brand new decks every single weekday, proven decks that help you climb in the meta. We bring you bundle guides, we bring you shop guides, we bring you all the Marvel Snap news, everything you need for your Marvel Snap journey. Again, free to you. Help us out. Hit that sub button. Help us grow. We're going for 8,000 subs. We also maintain, it's in the description every day, a giveaway sheet. This is every active giveaway in Marvel Snap. Thank you to Banshee for helping us out with that. This sheet is just a resource for the community. If you'd like to get some free stuff and find some cool content, make sure you check out that giveaway sheet. Our questions of the day are the last thing we're going to do before we get over to the actual spotlight caches. So Zay the Philman thinks the problem with Professor X is not enough Echo. And I think to some extent, Echo would answer Professor X, but I think there's a reasonable number of things that do a solid job of answering Professor X. If you decide to run Enchantress, I don't know if you have done that, but Enchantress completely hoses Professor X. It absolutely shuts it down, makes it an absolutely terrible play. Because where they're going to play Professor X is usually fairly obvious, and you don't even have to have priority. You get them to play the card, and you just get to beat it. There's a lot of ways to beat Professor X. The problem is how consistent he is and how consistently he shuts down other meta things, especially when paired with Ms. Marvel, right? So with that the case, I fully expect Professor X to get a nerf to 5-2 in the upcoming OTA this Thursday. I could easily be wrong, of course. No one's ever completely right about these. We don't actually know what they're thinking. But I know they've in the past said they don't want Lockdown to be the very best deck, even though they just released Ms. Marvel and even though they released Goliath like a few weeks ago or a couple months ago. They don't want Lockdown to be crazy strong, even though they keep releasing Lockdown cards. Fine. So I expect Professor X to die for these other card sins and lose that one power. I think Echo, again, is a solid answer if more people had it, but I don't think a lack of answers is the problem. I think a lack of home for the answers in the meta is the problem. Kieran wants to know what I design if I design a card for Shuri Sauron, and I think I have a really good card, but the single thing I'd most like to do to Shuri Sauron is make Red Skull literally any other card. I don't like a Nazi being a prominent, one of the most powerful cards in Marvel Snap, and I wish it weren't. Now, the card I'd design would be a 4/2 Cannonball. Cannonball's ability would be the next card. If you play your next card here, basically the same triggering effect as Shuri, it gets +4 power and cannot be destroyed because he's nigh invulnerable while he's blasting. So he's making the next thing he plays nigh invulnerable and making it stronger because it's in his blast field. That's my logic. I think would be very cool. I think it would also have other homes, which would also be cool. And as a 4/2, I don't think it would be overpowered. Max Snap wants to know what my current and non-snap goals are. So honestly, this is going to be sappy, but it's just to be a consistently better father. Um, like it takes me a while when I get home from work to actually wake myself up because I'm so exhausted at the end of the day that I get home from work at 3:34 to hang out with my son. And it takes me half hour, 40 minutes of him doing homework and me trying to get my energy up to really be able to be the kind of dad I want to be. And so my main goal outside of Marvel Snap is to really work on that and try and figure out how to find the energy right away to always be as excited to see him as I feel inside. Always to be as excited to play and hang out and do stuff as I feel inside. So it's a long-term goal. I'm not always sure how to go about it, but I am in fact working on it. If you'd like to have your questions read out in tomorrow's video, please leave one in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. All right, our card is Havoc. It is Series 4, 3,000 tokens, 2-0. After each turn, you lose 1 max energy, and this gains 4 power. What that means is if you play this on 2, you'll always have 2 energy. If you play this on 3, you'll always have 3 energy. If you play this on 4, you'll always have, you guessed it, 4 energy, and it goes on. It gets +4 each turn, which is the most scaling. Generally speaking, you can sometimes play it on turn 4, but when you really want to play this card, is turn 5 or 6. On turn 5, a 2/4 is fine. On turn um 5, if you are going to play a card like Ronin or Devil Dino last, then that 2/8 is top line stats. That's my logic for this card. It's also obviously got the Viper play. They're both 2s. You play Havoc on 2, you Viper it over. You lose 1 power, and if they don't have like a Beast or a Carnage, they're stuck at 3 power the rest of the game. You auto win. They're going to have to retreat. The more I think about this, and everyone keeps telling me that this isn't going to be good, it doesn't have to be good. It's not fun. The more I think about this, the less likely I think it is to continue to be a thing that Marvel Snap wants. I think the simplest solution for that is going to end up being that, like, I would assume not this OTA, but like if they tested it and it's bad, I would assume that like within a month or maybe even an emergency OTA, Viper ends up becoming a 3 cost card, or they figure out some other way for these cards not to really work together, because something here is very, very up, right? Like, even if this only works once in every 10 games, when it happens to you, it feels like you cannot meaningfully engage with Marvel Snap, and that's not a good feeling. All right, before we go any further, we're going to talk about our variants. There's not a lot of Havoc variants. In fact, there's only 2. There's this Daughterman one that is a Hellfire Gala variant. We don't have an announced date for. I like it a lot. I think it's actually really, really cool. But the Huddleston one is my absolute favorite. That's coming out. It'll be in everyone's shop tomorrow, almost certainly. I'm buying it. That's going to be my Havoc variant of choice. I love it. I think it's like a better version of the base Havoc. And the base Havoc, when I was like, full disclosure, I think Havoc's a terrible character. Like, if you've read his comics, he's very often just obnoxious. But Havoc is a fantastic design. When I was like 7 years old, Havoc was one of my favorite superheroes, just because I thought his costume with his stupid helmet was so cool. So I'm always gonna have a soft spot for Havoc, and this one has that design that I really love. The other Havoc is the Spotlight Cash one, and that one feels nothing like Havoc. That's just a blonde man in a silly coat. I don't really like the Spotlight Cash Havoc here. We also have the Spotlight Runaways Nico Minoru. I think that one's decent. I think the other ones that we have are at least as good as this, but hey, if you're going for a Havoc and you end up with this Nico, not bad. And I don't know what to do with this Legion, but I certainly don't like it. So this is a week where, unless you're like desperate for Nico, unless you absolutely love Destroy and need Nico, I would strongly urge you to not open Spotlight Caches. Does that mean I think you shouldn't get Havoc? That's a different conversation that we're going to have throughout the rest of this video. All right, synergies for Havoc. I think the easiest one is Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative starts him as an O2, and even if he's sucking your energy, he's going to be at least an O6 if even just played on the last turn, an O10 if played on turn 5. That seems good. Mr. Negative also runs Ravona. Ravona is going to be in, I think, every freaking Havoc deck, because when he costs only 1, he's significantly better. And if you can make him a 1 cost card, even if you don't get him before negative, you can afford to play him on turn 5 most of the time, and then he's still going to hit that 1/8 power line, which is again phenomenal. Electro might be decent with him, but now you're playing him on turn 4 as your only play, unless you play him with Jeff, and I think that's kind of funky. I don't love it, but it's a thing. What Electro does do is it lets you choose on turn 4 whether it lets you Viper on turn 4, either Electro, so they can only play 1 card, or Havoc, so that they have that terrible, they're stuck on 4 energy. So I think that's decent. One of the best ways to use them is Wave on 5. If you play Wave and Havoc on 5, what you end up with is a 13 power play on turn 5, and you can still play your 6, your Blob or whatever on on the last turn of the game on turn 6, because Wave makes it your most expensive thing cost 4. And you still had 5 energy. You even have 1 extra energy there, should you be playing something like High Evolutionary, which is one of the decks we're going to look at. We've got a Viper, and because we have Viper, we have Junk as a home. We already mentioned Ravona. He is weak to Shadow King, Valkyrie, and maybe Shang-Chi. If you play him early enough, he's very weak to Shang-Chi. But Shadow King in particular is in all the decks right now, and they just nerfed Luke Cage. Yet another reason I think this card was probably pretty damn good with Luke Cage. So there's something there. This seems like the Viper thing is going to be a huge boost to Destroy. So Destroy is this, and Bounce, I guess, but Destroy and Bounce are the ways that have answers to Havoc. Basically, to Havoc taking away your energy all game, you would sacrifice an energy, they would sacrifice an energy, but Destroy excuse me, if Destroy can kill it that next turn, Destroy will be fine because it can use X23 to get that energy back and still play a 6 at the end of the game. Meanwhile, you will be locking yourself out of energy, so I think this is a boost to Destroy. We're going to look at like 10 decks now. If you do not see a deck you like and you plan to get this card, hop on the Marvel Snap Zone Discord. There's a section called Podcast Chat with the hosts, and I will happily help you. Also, if you are a Series 3 Incomplete player, it tends to take me around a week to get through this, but shoot me a message if you are in the process of getting Series 3 cards and would like some decks. I'm perfectly happy to build you custom decks. I think it's fun. Okay, the first deck we're going to look at is Mr. Havoc. This is a negative deck that runs Havoc, like I said. This is a standard negative deck, right? There's nothing super duper fancy here. What you get as a bonus though is you get magic for the 7th turn, so that's lets Havoc grow bigger. You get Ravona, so Havoc can cost 1, and then you if you've got reversed Null and Zola, right? You can make everyone really huge. You can still Null and Zola and have Havoc growing at the same time. You can Jane to get Havoc, Null, and Zola all together, and when you miss completely on this, you still have Wong Panther. So there's a lot to like here. I also really like the Havoc, even as a 1/8 if you just get Ravona, with Iron Man on turn 5. That's a 16 power turn 5 play that you can add further power to later in the game. I like that. I think that's actually pretty damn good. Cool. I think there's a lot to like about this deck. This is probably the best negative deck we've seen in quite a while. This is another negative deck. I just thought there might be other ways to do it, and I wanted to throw a second one in. This one doesn't bother with Jane, and it doesn't bother with magic. It's instead just trying to say, okay, so Havoc's just an extra play. This one isn't built around him, right? Your other plays would be you can go Wong into White Tiger or Wong into Ironheart, and either of those should work completely fine. If you go Wong on 4, even if you miss Ravona, Ironheart Havoc on 5 seems like a really strong play. And then on turn 6, you can do something like drop a Panther on that Wong and still potentially win the game. And I think that's got some value too, right? Like there's some reasonable ways to win with this version as well. Next up, we have Havoc Bounce. The idea here is that maybe we can actually make Havoc work with only 2 energy if we play very carefully. And like we're still probably not playing Havoc unless we have Beast next turn. But you can Havoc on 2, make it a 2/4, and then you can Beast it away, and then you can play it again as a 1 cost on turn 5 or 6. And then you should still have enough energy, assuming you get Werewolf out on 4, to like comfortably win the game. I think that's a reasonable way to win. I'm going to be blunt. I don't think this is like the home for him. I think the negative ones are significantly better. This is Drewberry's deck. Drewberry does snap or pass. He is the single best person in this game at analyzing new cards. So huge props to Drewberry. Please make sure you check him out. He's also a friend of the show. He's been on the podcast before. This is his idea. It's called Feels Bad Man. It is basically saying I can go Havoc, I can go Viper Havoc, or I can go Viper Electro and win. I also have Man Thing, so I can do a Nihilus and clog the board. I have Eliath, so I can win. And then I have Shadow King, so I can turn off their Havoc. This deck is, if this works at all, this is going to be one of the worst feeling decks in the game. It's a total NPE. Looking at this deck and really thinking about it was why I was like, oh man, if Viper were a 3/2 or a 3/3, this would feel so much less terrible because Havoc will lock you in at 2, right? Which means you'd have to play Havoc on 3 and Viper on 4, and now it's no longer a good play. And I think that's like enough to really like lock this in as not completely overpowered, but like as is, just the sheer ability of doing either of these now seems nutty. Like you don't play Electro without Viper, right? For this deck. But like there's just so many other things you could do. You could Viper over that hood. You can just drop Nebula in one spot and Havoc in another and say you've only got one Shadow King, go. You can pass on Viper and just go Green Goblin. You can just say you were there playing things and drop a Man Thing and say thank you. You can drop a Man Thing on your hood or on your Electro, and then you can Annihilus that over. There's gross ways to win with this deck. I'm just saying. Like, absolutely gross. I really hope this isn't good. I'm absolutely terrified that this is going to be a meta deck. I don't know what else to say about that. Next up, we have Junk Fuck. This is just another Junk Havoc deck. I made, what did I change here? I I decided I didn't really want Nebula, but I would like Wave. I think Wave is slightly better here because Wave gives me the just turn 5 Havoc play where I can go Havoc and Wave on 5. And now I still can play Eliath or Annihilus on 6 without any real trouble. Um, that seems good to me, right? I can go still on 6 Annihilus and Hood. If I had Electro out, we get all sorts of nasty shenanigans. I just think this is probably really strong, and I don't feel like I super need Nebula, but the one change here should be quite powerful. Havoc all junk. I just went even further down the junk line, and I took an extra answer of Carnage, how to take care of my nonsense, because Carnage can kill your debris, your Viper, so on. This deck is super reliant on Annihilus, but Ravona with Hobgoblin, Green Goblin, Widow, and Havoc is an awful lot, right? So if you can get Ravona out, you have a lot of ways to junk up their deck. If you can get Debris and Annihilus out on 5, your opponent has fundamentally lost. You're basically always going to be able to fill everything up. And then, like, you could just Havoc a 2-4 on 6. The 1-6 of the Hood is fine. And once in a while, you just get free wins by going Havoc Viper, which seems like it's also probably pretty damn solid. My working assumption is this deck is going to be nasty. All right. I like Leech Darkhawk decks right now. I don't know if you watched my last 2 days video. We had a Leech Darkhawk good stuff. We also had a Leech Darkhawk bounce that I think are both meta decks. Please check them out. I think they're 2 of the very best decks in the game. If we're running Ravona in those, I don't see a super bad reason not to run Havoc and Viper. Even if I'm just Vipering over a Black Widow, I'm perfectly happy to clog them up that way. And everything else here is relatively self-explanatory, right? You fill them up with junk. Once in a while, you get a free win from Havoc and Widow. And if not, like if you've got for example, a Zabu out, a turn 5 of Havoc and Ms. Marvel is often pretty damn good. If you've got Zabu and Ravona out, you can do that, and then you can still on turn 6 play multiple cards, and just like your opponent's screwed. I think this is going to be a really good home. This was like my first Ravona deck that I've been playing with the shell of forever. In that it had Collector and Loki first, and I've been messing with it since then. I decided that the swing spots this time could just be Havoc and Viper, because why the hell not? And then if you're running Dark Oak right now, I strongly urge to run Leech. Leech is freaking OP. This is Havoc Hawk. Same concept as before, except now instead of Iron Man. See, look, instead of Iron Man, we are running Hobgoblin, and now we're not running Zabu any longer. We're instead going more goblins. Let's just go all in with Ravona and see what we can do. Again, if you get Ravona out, turn 5, Hobgoblin Havoc. Have a great day, right? Sometimes you're going to leech on turn 5 and not be able to play Havoc. That's totally fine. Sometimes Havoc isn't the play. Again, that's completely acceptable. When it is the play, though, you're good. If you've got Ravona, right? Like you play Ravona on 2, and then turn 3, you've got Havoc and Viper. Like snap immediately. As soon as you know what your opponent's playing, snap. You're probably going to win. They're going to have to retreat. You just steal 2 cubes every time that way. All right. Now, Paramanala has this deck that's basically about Modocking Dakin. Sorry, Zoling Dakin, and then playing Modok. It uses Ravona to do that. Why not throw Havoc in here? You've got the extra turn for magic, so Havoc is just an extra powerful thing. It's if you're playing it late enough in the game, turn 5, for example, you can go Havoc and Zola together. So you go Havoc and then Zola, and now you've got 2 12 power cards, which isn't amazing, but it sure ain't nothing. And then you just drop Dracula, right? Like if you have Dracula out already on turn 4, you can still you'll still have the energy for Modok, and then you Modok that away to end the game. Apocalypse is in hand. You have lots of big stuff. You win the game. I think Havoc fits really well here. This might be one of the better homes for the card. I really like Ravona in this deck though, because Morbius 1, Havoc 1, Zola 5, at Dracula 3. It's just a lot of value for that card. Evo Havoc, I think this is my secret sauce. This is likely to be my favorite. This is just a negative deck, right? Like you get negative stuff and then you drop like an abomination. My basic goal here is on turn 5 to be able to go Havoc Wave and then just drop a Hulk. That's going to get one big. But I can also just do my regular stuff, right? Or I can go Magic Skip, She-Hulk and Hulk. I could also potentially go Havoc and Abomination on turn 5. That seems like a pretty easy play. And then She-Hulk on turn 6 is, again, very likely to be able to be played. And the opponent's just got a lot of stuff to deal with in these cases. At that point, Cyclops is triggering, Wasp is triggering. Wasp is here as an extra way to get Abomination down, but also as just a good target for some Viper in. So, because I want a second target for Viper in all these decks, I'm happy to give them an 0-1 to clog a space on their board, especially when they're not expecting it. Sunspot's great here. Like, everything makes sense. This is my sleeper deck. I think this is very likely to be the best home of Havoc, and this is where I am starting. All right, so does Havoc look good? Yes, it's a lot of potential power. The downside is backbreaking. For him to be on your side, you almost always, outside of that bounce deck, need to play him on turn 4 or 5. I don't think the bounce is good. Or you can give him away. That's the power of Viper. He's probably worth 3,000 tokens, because if he's good, he's broken. But he's the ultimate wait-and-see card. Were I not wailing out because I'm a content creator, would wait till Friday. But I think he's worth the tokens, because if he's not good now, he's going to be good and he's going to break. At some point, +4 scaling is the highest we've ever seen. Every time we've seen +3 scaling, it's broken the game. I have to believe that +4 is going to do the same thing. Our next spotlight card is Nico Minoru. Series 5, 6,000 tokens. After you play your next card, cast a spell. The spell changes each turn. Nico's a 1/2. Let's look at the spells. So they all happen after you play your next card. So the first one is that next card becomes a demon. The next one is destroy to draw 2. The first 2 are great. Like, you do 1 and like it's a forge, you still get the forge ability on the card after that. You do the same thing for destroy and draw 2. Move to the right is the worst of the things, but it's cost me 8 cubes at least twice. Where I'm just like, okay, so they can't get in there in this deck, and then move to the right pops up on the last turn of the game, and I'm like, well, boop. +2 power is quite good. At that point, it's just forge. That is literally forge. Replace the card's location is situationally phenomenal. Sometimes it's nothing, but situationally phenomenal. Add a copy of it to your hand is often broken, especially with Collector. And double this card's power doesn't seem good, but you go forge into that, and all of a sudden you have an 8 power Nico that you can bounce and put wherever you want. That's unbelievable. So what we're saying right now is Nico is really, really good. So Nico's one of the better cards in the game. Were the rest of this month not so completely busted, she would be must-have. Next week has both Black Knight and Iron Lad. Both Black Knight and Iron Lad are must-have cards. I think I'd honestly rather have both of them than Nico at this exact moment. Black Knight gives you access to decks you wouldn't otherwise have access to, while Nico is just a bonus in decks that she's in. And Iron Lad's one of the, like, I don't know, 5-ish best cards in Marvel Snap. Meanwhile, last week, Blob completely shook up the meta. I think Blob is slightly more important than Nico, too. So, and Jeff was the week before. Jeff is more important than Nico. So Nico's has the bad fortune of just happening to come in a week where a lot of the other cards this week are cards that are, for various reasons, better or more important than she is. Okay, let's look at some Nico decks. This is Teledadman's Dark Rock Bounce. I told you I covered this deck yesterday. This is that Dark Rock Bounce with Leech that I decided to talk about. Basically, you want to bounce your cards that give the opponent trouble, and as you do that, you grow Werewolf, then you leech them, then you drop Darkhawk and a bunch of like 1 and 0 cost cards, and then you win. Or you drop a bunch of demons or a couple demons in Darkhawk, and that usually wins. And that's the whole basis of the deck. Do you need Nico here? Nope. But she's situationally great. She's situationally great here. If you can draw 2, that's a snap condition for this deck. If you can make her, this runs Bast over Forge. Most of them run Forge. Pick your poison. If this runs Forge or Bast, if you run Bast, she can be a 6. If you run Forge, she can be a 1/8. Both of those are stellar. She has a lot of really strong abilities here. Oh, copying Black Widow is stellar, just for the record. If you can copy Widow, if you can go like Nico Widow copy, Widow Spider-Ham, you're in real good shape as a traditional rule. All right, next up we have Lambi Loki. The very best Loki decks run Nico. She's amazing. You want the extra draw for Loki. You want the copy of cards for Loki. You want the extra power for Loki. Everything she does in this deck is great. This is Lambie's deck, the one he won the Creator Clash with. So it's absolutely worth having. It's absolutely a stellar deck. Um, if I had to pick one deck that I'm pretty sure is going to get hit in this OTA, though, it would be this one. I expect Werewolf to go to a 3-2 or 3-1, and I expect Loki to either go to a 5 or lose its negative or something like that. So, fair warning with Lambie Loki, but Nico is a fixture. It can, however, be replaced without too much trouble by something like Agent 13 or Sentinel. Annihilus Bounce is similar to the previous bounce, except, it's not running Darkhawk. This one, again, has Nico here. It can be Korg, it can be Iceman without too much trouble. But Nico is here, and it is a great card in this deck. Feel free to play. Right. This is yet another Werewolf. It's a great support card. Are you getting a gist here? Deadpool Destroy has the exact same thing, right? Nico's Destroy Draw 2 is backbreaking here. Nico's get a copy of a Deadpool, get a copy of a Venom, get a copy of a Hulkbuster thing are all super duper duper powerful. So Nico can be great here. The +2 power is really great on Deadpool or Venom or the Hulkbuster thing. There's a lot of things to like with this deck for this card. This is the deck that if this is your deck, I would go for Nico for. I think she's a severely underrated upgrade for Deadpool Destroy. So if this is the deck you want to go for, then this is where you want Nico. I also think this is, and someone asked me this yesterday, I think it was Chad. Hey, Chad. What is the deck you would go for if you were like just entering pool 3? I think this is it because outside of Nico, like you can do this without Nico. You need X23 and Null, and then you only really need like 2 Series 3 cards, Venom and Deadpool. So that's about as cheap as you get for a really strong deck. And then, and Death, excuse me. You would also like Death. But you could replace like Death with Taskmaster, and there's other ways to do this. While you do need X23. Nico's are just a really great bonus. You can easily replace it in this deck. And finally, Blob Thanos. I don't love Nico in Blob Thanos, bluntly. I think it's a good card, not a great card. Lambie sold me on cutting it because when you go Mind Stone, you really, really, really want to hit Time Stone so you can play one of your 4 or 5 drops. If you can play one of your 4 or 5 drops early, the deck is way better. So with that the case, this is made by Yeti, but I'm pretty sure this is Safety Blade's version, by the way. I would rather cut Nico from Thanos, even though for a little bit there, it was the 7th Infinity Stone. I think that's a much more controversial place for it to land currently. KM Best thinks that Nico should still be there. Lambie does not. But here's how this works. When Lambie makes a claim, unless I have a strong reason to believe otherwise, I usually go with Lambie. So I don't think Nico really goes here. This is the deck where if you really, really, really want Nico, you really like this is what you go for her for. Cool. All right, next up we have Legion. Legion is one of my favorite cards in the game. 5/7, Series 4, 3,000 tokens. On reveal, replace each other location with this one. Basically, Legion is the ultimate scam card with some pretty good stats. You can do the Storm on 4, Legion on 5, and just lock the game up. Basically turns everything but Jeff off for the last turn of the game. You can do Legion on various locations if you can cheat them out early. You can do Legion to the or Throne Room to get Shang-Chi off. You can do Legion to give a location that you have where you have like the board full and your opponent only has 1 or 2 cards. The +2 at the end of the turn is really strong. Legion is great. Legion is really, really great, but Legion also doesn't have the best homes right now. So Legion is great, but dangerous. There's a lot of location control in the game right now because Thanos is everywhere, which means that Legion can also be dangerous for changing things. The main home for Legion is, you guessed it, Thanos. I like this version better than the last version that we looked at. Is this Lambie's version? This is close enough to Lambie's version for government work. Basically, oh no, Lambie's version has, I don't know where this version came from, but Lambie's version has little Elsa over Okoye. Okay, it's fine here. It doesn't put anything but arrow into Shang-Chi range. This one keeps Goliath. But Legion is just like a scam. You can scam it out early, especially in this deck. I like Legion in in this type of deck, largely because the kiln is a card. So if you can drop a bunch of stones early, and then you can get Legion down on turn 4, you can just close out the game and win. And that's pretty damn strong. So I like Legion here. I think Legion's really good in Thanos decks currently. Legion also fits in your non-Thanos lockdown. This deck opens up the Storm option. Our friend Keen Koala every month hits Infinite with Quake. That always runs Storm and Legion as just an extra scam option. This deck does not have a ramp, really, though. So you're either hitting Legion with Lad, or you're choosing between Legion and Professor X, which is not super ideal. But Legion can win you the game, and when it wins you the game, it wins you a lot of cubes. So it's a high cube rate card when it wins. And our last Legion deck, this was the classic home of Legion. Legion is quite good in move decks. If you see a move deck, you very, very often want Legion in it, because there's so many locations that are both pro and con for this list, and there's not like anything you super duper need for move in that 5 spot outside of Vision, right? Like you'd like Vision, but whatever. Legion gives you a way to win at the end of the game, and is thus a very strong card. It also can close things down on opponents, whereas you have moves, so you can get into the close down locations. Move and Doom, so you can get into those locations. I think Legion is really good here. Also, Kunlun is a fairly common location. It gives +2 to anything that moves there, and that adds up very quickly. Legion turning everything into that and then moving like a Vision or a Nightcrawler or a Jeff there, or Silk there, or whatever, etc., is really, really strong. All right, so I think this is wait on see on Havoc. But if you want him, you need to use tokens unless you don't have Nico. And you have Iron Lad and Black Knight for next week. All good? Buy with tokens unless you're missing Nico and already have Iron Lad and Black Knight. Legion is great, but not a meta card right now. So I don't think it's worth going out of the way for. It's also another cheaper card for tokens. And I think otherwise this week is a skip for basically everyone until Friday. So just wait till Friday. I will do another review on Friday and then a final review on Monday for the last day that this is in Spotlight Caches, as a way to go, hey, this card has been great, or hey, this card is not it. All good? Thanks so much for watching. Today may be a 2-video day, so keep it here. Hit that sub button. We'll see you tomorrow or later. Peace.